Shrutinam sutranam smriti nikhila vedanuvachasam paramhardam yuktam hyakila chidajit bhinnam apicha abhinnam swabhavyat gunicha paramam brahmakamidam samadishtam yaistan api satatamide guruvaran bhagyodayena bahujanma samarjitena satsangame valabhate purusho yadavai ajnana hetu krita moha mahamdhakara nasham vidhayahi tatodayate vivekaha ajnana hetu krita moha mahamdhakara nasham vidhayahi tatodayate vivekaha. Harihi Om, Harihi Om, Harihi. All of us together, close your eyes, interlock your fingers and put them on your lap. Sit as straight as possible without straining yourselves and join me. All of you. Harihi Om Tats Jaya Guru. We are continuing our discussion on Viveka Chudamani. Viveka Chudamani is a text very, very unique in character, as I have explained earlier. You will find a great deal of sublimity in this text, a lot of purity, and so far as spiritual enlightenment is concerned, it is presented in all its details, in theory as well as in practice. As you already know, this is the Prakarana Grantha, the independent writing of Shankaracharya, which he made the last in his life. So naturally you will find all the sublimity and maturity that you can think of in an author as well as his production. The name is very suggestive, Viveka Chudamani. People generally have the habit of wearing ornaments to ornament and enrich their body, not in terms of health, but in terms of appearance. Whenever you go anywhere, you must have a good dress. Dress is very important, and it should be worn also very well. There are people who are unable to wear good dress in a nice manner. There are some people who can wear even an apparently lesser level of dress in a very beautiful manner. So it's an art if you think of it. Whatever we do, there is an art there. Art. That art is something very important. The art and other manifestations will be there only when you have a good and sensitive mind and you have an understanding and keen intelligence. Whenever people do something, you observe them. Who is doing it better and what is the better way of doing? We learn audio-visually, primarily by seeing, secondarily by hearing, or with equal measure both. But the moment we wake up in the morning, our eyes are open. There may not be any sound nearby, but our eyes start functioning. They continue to function till we close the eyes at night and go to sleep. So that is the most sensitive and most used organ. Our learning is primarily through seeing. It is equally so with hearing also. So far as spiritual subjects and spiritual learning are concerned, I think more than the eye, the ears become effective. Very effective. One man can talk and thousands, lakhs and millions can hear him. One man may not be able to be seen by millions, but nowadays with our modern facilities, modern technology, this telecast system, that makes people see, but they don't see them directly. In our ashram, many people come, Swamiji, we are seeing you every day over the TV. But we still want to see you personally. So that personal vision is not possible. But you can hear, quite a lot of hearing can be done. So the ears are very effective. So audio-visual interactions are the most effective in the case of the human beings. Now this is called Viveka Chudamani. Chudamani means a crest jewel. A jewel or an ornament which you wear on your head. Now Shankara has significantly named his text as Viveka Chudamani. Means what? What should really ornament or beautify your head is not the external ornament, but the internal quality called Viveka. Viveka is the art and process of discriminating the things of the world, including your own personality. You are seeing the whole world. We are living upon the earth. The earth is constantly changing its position. It goes on revolving in its own axis. It also goes on circumambulating the sun. So the constant changes are there. In our own body, there is constant change. Whenever the whole universe is changing, it occurs to our reason, how can the universe continuously change? When A changes into B, that change is not possible only because of A. Because A is getting transformed into B and B gets transformed into C. So there must be something to make A change and B further change. So there must be a changeless substratum around which all the changeful elements are existing and functioning. This kind of a discrimination you must have. This is called Viveka. I think Viveka is a necessary, an essential, an indispensable corollary of human life. We are sending our children to the schools, even preschool classes. What for? Only to teach them the art and process of distinguishing between matters. We have two hands and we are told this is the left hand and this is the right hand. So we must be able to distinguish between the two, the left eye and the right eye, the left leg and the right leg. Any knowledge comes to you through comparison and contrast. So Viveka is the very root of every form of knowledge, every form of activity, every form of excellence. Unless we are able to incorporate, imbibe and also develop an ample measure of Viveka in our life, I don't think we can justify our life as a human being. We cannot justify our life. To the extent you are able to gain Viveka and apply it in your life, to that extent alone you are a human. This is something very important. I always say, I have told you also many times, what? All our Vedas, the four Vedas along with the Upanishads, then the other allied texts like Ramayana and Mahabharata. In the Hindi belt you call it Mahakavya. In Sanskrit and also in our language in Kerala, we call them Itihasa. Itihasa means this has been the case before. Whatever was the situation in life, the behavior of the people, the character of the people, and whatever this character and behavior led them to, all these are laid open before us. So it is actually a history of human character, behavior, interaction and their consequences. We have two Itihasas, Mahakavyas, Ramayana and Mahabharata. Then we have many sutras like Brahma Sutras, Mimamsa Sutras and all that. There are so many other sutras also. We have a number of smridis, right from Manusmriti, Bodhayana Smriti, Yajnavalkya Smriti, Vyasa Smriti. So many smritis are there. They are like the constitutions we have adopted at the time of our independence. When we wanted to become an independent country, the first item that we wanted to have was a constitution written by ourselves, given to us by ourselves. The constitution was given in this manner. We, the people of India, are giving to ourselves this constitution called the Constitution of India to govern our individual and social behavior. Unless you have something like this, you cannot rule the country. Even now, whenever we talk about, everybody refers to the constitution. Like that we have our smritis. Then we have the further texts called mythological or Puranic texts. Quite a number of them. 18 Puranas are there and 18 Upa-Puranas are there. Right from the Vedic literature coming down to the Puranic compositions, you will find that only Viveka is taught. I have been coming to Jamshedpur for the past 55, 56 years. All these years, I have always tried to instill, generate and reinforce in you the quality and the virtue, the habit of Viveka. I don't know whether I have succeeded. By Viveka, you are thinking that there is a God behind the world. By Viveka, you understand that there is a soul other than the body. If you want to extract the soul, discover or realize the soul, you have to use the art and the process of Viveka. It is there in every breath of yours. It is there in the circulation of blood. It is there in every thought and emotional process. It is there in all your reasoning, knowledge, doubt. It is there in your wakefulness, dream and also sleep. Everywhere it is there, but we are not able to understand and realize it. Why? Only because you lack Viveka. Viveka Chudamani is a text where this widely spreading Viveka is chosen to be instilled and cultivated in the listeners and readers. It is something very, very important. After every day's talk, you should think about yourselves. What? Have I gained Viveka? Is my Viveka enhanced, increased? If so, how much? Am I able to understand truth better? Can I sift fact from fallacy? Can I sift the reality from imagination? In this way, you should start thinking. So this is a wonderful text. It is revolving around the concept of self and self-realization. Another phrase that I can use is, it speaks about Jivan Mukti. Mukti means freedom. Jivan Mukti means freedom which you realize while you are living here and now. Many people have an idea of Mukti. What is that? Mukti or freedom is something that we are going to get after the death. No more birth in the mother's womb. Many people even now think that moksha is like that. It is not at all so. Moksha is for your mind. It is for your intelligence. It is for your ego. And these three elements are there only when you are living now. As you suffer from bondage, its effects, so you will start rejoicing over freedom and its benefits. That Jivan Mukti is the subject of discussion there. Here, Shankara presents a disciple going to a guru, and he speaks about who is a guru. This is something that you should understand. In the spiritual life of seeking, you will find the maximum place and importance are given to the guru. Without a guru, you will never be able to make a success of your seeking. As I told you that, all the spiritual literature, philosophical literature, religious literature of our country is only trying to instill Viveka in all our practices, temple practices, pilgrimage practices, various forms of rituals and ceremonies. In all of them, Viveka alone is taught, at least sought to be imparted. But how many people have Viveka? Just see, in spite of all these practices, Why you are not having it? Because you have nobody to teach you, to point out what is true and what is Viveka. As long as you make an independent effort, you are never going to succeed at all. Even if you have a guru, there will be no difference. Unless you interact with him, sit near his feet, ask him to tell you, speak to you, raise your questions, raise your doubts, ask for clarification and be governed by it. I am getting many letters from the telecast viewers and very interesting questions. Some people are asking about, should I perform Shraddha for the departed souls? We are told that Atma is immortal, it is unborn and undying. If it is unborn and undying, is it not so with our departed souls? Yes. Then why are we performing this Shraddha? They need food and drink when they had a body. When the body has been shed, why are we giving them balls of rice and the other things? Will they come and eat? Please explain to me. One question is like that. Others have raised some very technical questions, religious questions. The position given to a departed soul, it is something like this. Your father has a position. Father's father has another position. And his father, always Shraddha is performed for 3 generations. Now, for you, your father is father, his father is grandfather and great-grandfather. When your children start doing Shraddha for you, then you become the father and your father becomes another person. So the same person assuming 2 or 3 different statuses, I am not able to reconcile with, he says. This question I had encountered for the first time. So I said, I will have to go into this consideration. I will ask 1 or 2 people, what exactly is the practice? I have not performed any Shraddha in my life. I became a sannyasin when my parents were alive. And thereafter as a sannyasin, I had no occasion to perform Shraddha for my parents. So I don't know about it. So I said, I will inquire and find out and answer you. Now I have got information. I will take some time to reply that man. See, very interesting question. All these are questions. So ultimately it is a matter of Viveka, Viveka and Viveka alone. This Viveka is sought very well here. Now Shankara goes on speaking that the spiritual seeking, that seeker must have some qualifications. These qualifications have already been discussed here. I think we have come to verse number 33 as Ma tells me. So the qualifications are briefly, the first is Nitya, Anitya, Vastu, Viveka. Viveka, discrimination with regard to Nitya and Anitya Vastus. What is real and eternal and what is fleeting and evanescent. The discrimination between the two. If you apply this discrimination, you will find the whole world is transitory. Your body also is transitory. Our family members, the house and the belongings we have, all of them are nashwara, transitory. If all these are transitory, what is the eternal becomes a necessary question. If you seek what is eternal, then you can only find it within yourself in the form of I, which remains eternal ever since we are born till we die. Your body has undergone a number of changes. Mind also is undergoing a number of changes. Intelligence and ego also. Nevertheless, we remain constant. That constancy or constantness in us, it comes from that I. That is what you refer to. By I, we are not referring to the body. The body is my body. Mind is my mind. Intelligence is my intelligence. And ego is my ego. So I stand separately. And that does not undergo any change at all. So that is the eternal factor. If you are able to discriminate in this manner, you have said to have Viveka in sufficient measure. And you can develop it. The next is Ihamutra Phala Bhoga Viragaha. What does it mean? Our mind is always ambitious about gaining, amassing, collecting a number of things, having a number of attainments in this world and also in the other world. As long as we are here, we want to have many things here. Family, children, house, property, wealth, fixed deposit, gold, silver, copper, so many things. And when we die, we must also have something. That is why we perform so many rituals for getting heaven, this, that and all. Now the second qualification to be a seeker is understanding that all are fleeting, not at all eternal. Develop dispassion, non-desire towards everything in this world and the other world. The third consists of a number of characteral and behavioral qualifications like Shamadamadi Shatka Sampattihi, a group of 6 qualifications or virtues. And the last is Mumukshutva, a burning aspiration for getting liberation. These are the qualifications. We have discussed all of them. A disciple or a shishya, a seeker who has these qualifications, he should approach a guru, a sadguru, seeking his guidance, his instruction, his total acceptance and protection in the matter of his seeking. Now he says, when he goes to the guru, the question arises generally, who is a guru? How do you define him? So this definition is very important here. It is in 33. Shrotriyo Avrajino Akamahado Yo Brahmavittamaha. Shrotriyo Avrajino Akamahado Yo Brahmavittamaha Brahmanyuparadashamto Nirindhana ivanalaha Ahedugadaya sindhuhu Bandhuranamatam sadam Ahedugadaya sindhuhu Bandhuranamatam sadam. Shrotriyaha, बोलिए, अव्रजिनः अकामहतः यः ब्रह्मवित्तमः ब्रह्मणि उपरतः ब्रह्मण्युपरतः शान्तः निरिन्धनः इव अनलः इवानलः अहेतुकदया सिन्धुः बन्धुः आनमताम् सताम् अहेतुकदया सिन्धुः बन्धुरानमताम् अहेतुकदया सिन्धुर् बन्धुरानमताम् sadam. See, a very beautiful definition. Why are these definitions given? If you ask me, there is a clear answer. You should not dispose them off as a piece of information. It is not so much for any disciple to judge a guru, but it is for the guru himself to judge himself. When Shankara speaks about the lakshanas or the merits or qualifications of a guru, anybody who is teaching, he must apply these to himself and find out, do I conform to these things mentioned here? So it's a very beautiful description. Shrotriyaha. Shruti means the scriptures. Shrotriya means one who is well versed in our scriptures. In India, we have got the great treasure of the beginningless Anadi Veda.